In a galaxy where dragons rule star systems and humans are considered nothing more than useful pets, one grease-stained mechanic is about to shatter every law of biology, magic, and imperial protocol with a single accidental touch. What happens when the most powerful being in the known universe, a dying dragon empress whose very breath can ignite solar flares, discovers that salvation comes not from ancient magic or advanced technology, but from the calloused hands of a species everyone dismissed as primitive? Marcus Chen never asked to become the most wanted human in the galaxy. He just wanted to fix engines and stay invisible. But when his routine maintenance job aboard the Imperial Dreadnought goes catastrophically wrong, his touch awakens something in the Empress that hasn't been seen in 1,000 years: hope. Now, as royal families plot his death and scientists scramble to understand the impossible, Marcus must navigate a universe suddenly desperate to either worship him or dissect him. Because in a cosmos where dragons have forgotten how to truly live, sometimes it takes a human to remind them what it means to be alive. Marcus Chen had grease under his fingernails and a bad feeling in his gut as he crawled through the ventilation system of the Imperial Dreadnought Celestial Dominion. The massive ship hummed around him with power that could crack planets, but all Marcus cared about was the faulty atmospheric processor in Section 7 that kept making that annoying clicking sound. He was good at being invisible. 26 years of life had taught him that humans survived by staying quiet, doing their jobs, and never, ever drawing attention from their dragon overlords. In a galaxy where his species was classified somewhere between useful tool and amusing pet, invisibility was survival. The processor's housing was tighter than expected. Marcus squeezed through a gap that would have been impossible for any of the reptilian crew members, his human flexibility finally proving useful for something. His headlamp illuminated the cramped space as he worked, replacing corroded connections with practiced efficiency. "Just another day fixing what the great dragons can't be bothered with," he muttered, voice muffled by the tight confines. The irony wasn't lost on him that beings capable of breathing fire in the vacuum of space still needed humans to reach the awkward corners of their own ships. That's when the ship shuddered. Not the normal vibration of hyperspace travel, but something deeper, more organic. The lights flickered from their usual warm gold to an alarming crimson, and somewhere in the distance, Marcus heard what sounded like a very large creature in very serious pain. His comm unit crackled to life. "All maintenance personnel report to emergency stations immediately. The Empress requires immediate medical attention." Marcus froze. The Empress. Dragon Empress Sarithe Nightflame, ruler of the Pyrrhonic Empire, destroyer of the rebellious Andromedines, and the single most powerful being in known space. She was on this ship? He'd been told this was a routine diplomatic vessel. Nobody mentioned he'd be breathing the same recycled air as a creature who could incinerate star systems when she sneezed. Another shudder shook the ship, stronger this time. The metal around him groaned, and Marcus realized with growing horror that he might be trapped. The atmospheric processor had shifted during the tremor, pinning him between two massive pipes. Panic set in as he tried to squeeze backward, but the space had become too narrow. His human-sized frame, usually an advantage in tight spaces, was now a liability. The air was getting thinner and his headlamp was starting to flicker. "Help!" he called into his comm, but got only static in response. The ship's emergency systems were probably prioritizing the royal medical crisis over one trapped maintenance worker. That's when he smelled it. Smoke, not the clean electrical smell of a blown fuse, but something organic and terrible, like burning dreams. Through the gaps in the ventilation system, Marcus could see into the corridor below. A procession was moving past, and his breath caught in his throat. Dragon nobles in their humanoid forms carried an enormous stretcher, their usually pristine scales dulled with worry. On the stretcher lay a figure that made Marcus's human brain struggle to process what he was seeing. Dragon Empress Sarithe in her reduced form was still nearly 8 feet tall, her scales a deep obsidian that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The scales were turning gray at the edges, losing their lustrous depth, and with each labored breath, small puffs of smoke escaped her nostrils, not the controlled fire of a healthy dragon, but the desperate gasps of a dying flame. Marcus had never seen a dragon look vulnerable before. It was like watching a mountain crack or a star flicker out. The procession paused directly below his hiding spot, and Marcus heard voices speaking in rapid, urgent Draconic. His translation implant was basic, designed for simple maintenance requests, but he caught fragments. Fading fast, no response to healing flames. The bloodline dies with her, then the ship shuddered again more violently than before, and Marcus found himself in freefall. The atmospheric processor gave way entirely, pipes twisting apart like angry serpents. Marcus plummeted through the suddenly opened ventilation grate, tools scattering around him like metal rain. He had just enough time to realize he was about to become the first human to accidentally assault royalty before he crashed down onto the stretcher, directly onto the dying dragon Empress. Time seemed to crystallize. Marcus found himself face to face with Empress Cyrathe, his grimy work clothes pressed against her darkening scales, his very human hand somehow resting against the side of her massive neck where her pulse should be. Her eyes opened. They were like looking into the heart of a star, golden with flecks of fire that seemed to dance in the depths. But those flames were dying, growing dimmer even as Marcus watched. She looked at him with what might have been curiosity, as if trying to understand why this small, soft creature had fallen from the ceiling to interrupt her death. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered, the words tumbling out in English before his translation implant could catch up. "I didn't mean to—" That's when it happened. A warmth spread from the point where his hand touched her scales. Not heat warmth. The difference was important, though Marcus couldn't have explained why. It felt like sunshine after months underground, like hot coffee on a cold morning, like his grandmother's hugs when he was small and scared. The warmth traveled up his arm and through his chest, and he realized with growing amazement that it wasn't coming from him. It was coming through him, from somewhere deeper than his bones, older than his thoughts. Empress Cyrathe's eyes widened, the dying flame suddenly roaring back to brilliant life. Her gray scales began to shimmer, color flooding back into them like dawn breaking over a dark ocean. The smoke from her nostrils cleared, replaced by the controlled burn of healthy dragon fire. Around them, the royal procession had frozen in shock. Marcus could hear gasps, whispered prayers in a dozen languages, and at least one noble fainting with a spectacular crash. "Impossible," someone breathed in perfect standard. "The human. How is the human?" But Marcus barely heard them. He was transfixed by what was happening beneath his hand. The Empress's pulse was growing stronger, steadier, and with each beat he could feel something else, ancient, vast, and utterly alien, stirring to life. It felt like touching the edge of a sleeping god. Empress Cyrathe spoke, her voice like distant thunder. "You," she said, the word carrying harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. "What are you?" Before he could answer, before he could even think of an answer, strong hands grabbed him and yanked him away from the stretcher. Dragon guards in full armor surrounded him, their claws extended and crackling with suppressed fire. "Step away from Her Imperial Majesty," the lead guard commanded. "How dare you contaminate the royal person with your—" "Stop!" The Empress's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. She was sitting up now, her restored vitality evident in every movement. Where moments before she had been a dying ember, she now blazed with renewed power. "Release him immediately." The guards hesitated, clearly torn between training and the unprecedented situation. "I said, release him," Cyrathe repeated, and this time there was no mistaking the imperial authority in her voice. Fire danced around her words, and the temperature in the corridor rose 10 degrees. Marcus found himself free but still surrounded, dozens of reptilian faces staring at him with mixtures of awe, terror, and confusion. He tried to process what had just happened, but his human mind felt like a computer trying to run software designed for supercomputers. "Your Majesty," one of the nobles ventured, his scales pale with shock, "perhaps we should have the human examined by the medical staff. There may be some unknown pathogen." "There is no pathogen," the Empress said firmly. She swung her legs over the side of the stretcher, moving with fluid grace that had been absent moments before. What happened was something else entirely. She looked at Marcus, and he felt like a specimen under a microscope, but not in the dehumanizing way he was used to. This felt different, curious rather than dismissive. "Tell me your name, human." "Marcus Chen, your Imperial Majesty," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. The translation implant made his words come out in perfectly accented Draconic, which somehow made the whole situation feel even more surreal. "Marcus Chen," she repeated, and the way she said his name made it sound like she was tasting something new and unexpected. "How long have you been aboard my ship?" "Your ship?" Marcus blinked. "I thought this was a diplomatic vessel." "I've been assigned here for 3 months working maintenance rotation 7. A ripple of something, amusement, passed across her features. "You have been working on my personal dreadnought for 3 months, and no one thought to mention that you were—" She paused, studying him with those flame-bright eyes. "What you are? What I am?" Marcus felt like he'd missed several important parts of this conversation. "I'm just a maintenance tech. Atmospheric systems, mostly. I'm really good with the small spaces that your people can't reach." Another pause. The assembled nobles were watching this exchange like spectators at a tennis match, their heads swiveling back and forth between the Empress and the increasingly confused human. "Show me," Sarathi said suddenly. "Show you what, Your Majesty?" "Touch me again." The entire corridor fell silent. Marcus was pretty sure several nobles stopped breathing entirely. "Your Majesty," the lead guard protested, "this is highly irregular. We don't know what sort of alien contamination." "Commander Sethrak," the Empress said without taking her eyes off Marcus, "if you interrupt me one more time, I will demonstrate exactly how recovered I am by incinerating your scales one at a time." Commander Sethrak wisely decided to examine his claws with sudden intense interest. Marcus looked around at all the expectant faces, then back at the Empress. "Are you sure? I mean, I haven't washed my hands since I was working on the atmospheric processor. I've got grease under my fingernails and probably some coolant residue." "I am certain," she said, extending one clawed hand toward him. "Touch my hand, Marcus Chen." He reached out hesitantly, his small human hand dwarfed by her elegant claws. The moment their skin made contact, the same warmth flowed between them, but this time Marcus was ready for it. He could feel it more clearly, not magic exactly, but something that used the same pathways, something that felt like sunlight given form, like hope made tangible. The Empress's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked almost human in her surprise. "Extraordinary," she breathed. "You have no idea what you're doing, do you?" "Not even a little bit," Marcus admitted. She laughed then, a sound like silver bells mixed with distant thunder. "In 1,000 years of rule, I have never encountered anything like this. You, Marcus Chen, maintenance technician 3rd class, appear to be the rarest thing in the universe. Which is a human who can channel life force itself." She stood, towering over him but somehow not making him feel small. "The question now is what to do with you." That's when Marcus realized his life had just become infinitely more complicated. Around him, the assembled nobles were already whispering among themselves, and he caught fragments that made his blood run cold. Unprecedented power, must be studied, could change the balance of everything, the Empress seemed to read his expression. "Do not fear, Marcus Chen. You saved my life, whether you understand how or not. That makes you valuable beyond measure." She paused, and something sharp entered her voice. "It also makes you dangerous to those who prefer the status quo." As if summoned by her words, rapid footsteps echoed from down the corridor. A new group approached, older dragons in elaborate court dress, their scales bearing the intricate scarring that marked them as members of the Royal Council. "Your Imperial Majesty," the leader said, his voice carefully neutral, "we came as soon as we heard about your miraculous recovery. Praise be to the eternal flames that you are well." "Indeed, Lord Vorthak," the Empress replied, her own voice carrying subtle warning notes. "Though I suspect my recovery is not the only reason for your presence." Lord Vorthak's gaze fell on Marcus, and the human felt like a mouse being studied by a particularly intelligent snake. We are naturally curious about the unprecedented circumstances. A human appearing to channel healing energy is scientifically fascinating. I'm sure it is, Xyrathy said dryly. Perhaps the human should be taken to the medical bay for examination, Lord Vorthak suggested, to ensure that this remarkable ability is properly understood. For the good of the Empire, of course. Marcus didn't need a translation implant to understand the subtext. He was about to become a lab rat for creatures who saw his entire species as barely sentient. An excellent suggestion, the Empress said, and Marcus felt his heart sink. Marcus will indeed be taken to the medical bay. She paused, letting Lord Vorthak begin to smile. Under my personal protection, as a guest of the Imperial household. The smile died on Vorthak's face. Your Majesty, surely such measures aren't necessary. They are absolutely necessary, Xyrathy cut him off. This human saved my life through means we don't yet understand. Until we do understand, he remains under my direct protection. Anyone who attempts to harm him or conduct unauthorized experiments will answer to me personally. She stepped closer to Marcus, her presence warm and protective despite her intimidating size. Furthermore, Marcus Chen is hereby granted the title of Imperial Consultant with all the privileges and protections that entails. The assembled nobles looked like they'd just swallowed live electric eels. Imperial Consultant was typically a title reserved for the most distinguished scholars and advisors in the Empire. Granting it to a human was unprecedented. Your Majesty, Lord Vorthak tried again. Perhaps we should discuss this in private council before making such momentous decisions. The decision is made, the Empress said with finality that could have cut diamond. Marcus, you will accompany me to my private quarters. We have much to discuss. As the imperial procession reformed around them, Marcus found himself walking beside the most powerful being in the galaxy, trying to process the fact that his life had just been turned completely upside down by a routine maintenance call. Behind them, he could hear the nobles muttering among themselves in rapid Draconic, their voices filled with frustration and poorly concealed anger. He didn't need to understand every word to know that he had just made some very powerful enemies. But when he glanced up at the Empress, she caught his eye and gave him what might have been an encouraging smile. "Welcome to Imperial politics, Marcus Chen," she said quietly. "I hope you're ready for the adventure of several lifetimes." Marcus thought about his small apartment in the human quarters, his simple tools, his quiet invisible existence. All of that was gone now, swept away by a single accidental touch. "I don't think anyone could be ready for this," he replied honestly. "Good," Xyrathy said. "If you thought you were ready, I'd know you didn't understand the situation properly." As they walked toward the Imperial quarters, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been recruited for a war he didn't understand, fighting for a side he'd never chosen with weapons he couldn't control. But looking at the Empress beside him, vital and alive when she should have been dying, he realized that some things were worth fighting for, even when you had no idea what you were doing. The adventure, as she'd called it, was just beginning. The imperial quarters of the Celestial Dominion were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, and he'd been aboard the ship for 3 months. The walls themselves seemed to be alive, covered in what looked like living metal that shifted between gold and deep crimson. Crystalline formations jutted from the ceiling, each one pulsing with its own internal light, creating an aurora effect that made Marcus feel like he was walking inside a star. "Impressive, isn't it?" Empress Xyrathy noted, watching his expression as they entered her private study. These chambers were grown rather than built, dragon craftsmanship at its finest. Marcus nodded, trying not to gawk like a tourist. The furniture was sized for beings much larger than humans, but somehow the space didn't make him feel insignificant. If anything, the organic curves and flowing lines made him feel welcome in a way that the sterile maintenance sectors never had. "Please sit," the Empress gestured toward a chair that had definitely not been there moments before. As Marcus watched in fascination, the living metal of the floor had simply formed it, rising and shaping itself into something perfectly sized for his human proportions. "How did it know?" he asked, settling into the surprisingly comfortable seat. The ship's bio-neural matrix is connected to my thoughts, Zirathi explained, taking her own seat across from him. I wished for you to be comfortable, and it responded accordingly. She paused, studying him with those flame-bright eyes, though I confess I've never had it accommodate a human before. The matrix seems unusually receptive to your presence. Marcus wasn't sure what to make of that, so he filed it away with all the other impossible things that had happened in the past hour. Your Majesty, about what happened earlier. Please, call me Zirathi when we're in private, she interrupted. After what you've done for me, formal titles seem rather pointless. Zirathi, Marcus said carefully, testing the name. It felt strange on his tongue, like speaking the name of a goddess. I need you to know that I have no idea what I did back there. I'm not some secret human weapon or hidden magical prodigy. I'm just a guy who's good with machines. Are you? She asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Tell me about yourself, Marcus Chen. What brought you to my ship? Marcus shrugged, suddenly feeling very ordinary under her intense gaze. Standard labor contract. The Empire needed humans for maintenance work on the newer ships. Apparently our size and flexibility make us useful for accessing tight spaces. I was working civil engineering on Kepler Station before this, but the pay was better out here. Kepler Station? Zirathi repeated thoughtfully. That's in the Terran Protection Zone, isn't it? One of the few places where humans maintain semi-autonomous government. Yeah, though semi-autonomous is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, Marcus said with a wry smile. We got to elect our own city councils and manage local affairs, but everything important was still handled by the Dragon administration. And your family? Are they still there? Marcus felt the familiar ache that came with thinking about home. My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a transport accident. She passed away 2 years ago. Heart failure. He looked down at his hands. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. Human medical technology isn't exactly prioritized in imperial healthcare spending. Zirathi was quiet for a long moment. When Marcus looked up, he saw something unexpected in her expression, genuine sorrow. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, and the words carried weight that formal condolences never did. Losing family is difficult regardless of species. Thank you, Marcus said, surprised by her empathy, but I still don't understand what any of this has to do with what happened to you. I touched you and somehow you got better. That's not normal for humans. No, Zirathi agreed. It's not normal for anyone. What you did should have been impossible. She stood and walked to one of the crystalline formations, placing her hand against its surface. Immediately, the crystal began to glow brighter, displaying what looked like complex biological diagrams. Do you know anything about dragon physiology, Marcus? Just the basics from the maintenance manuals. You're silicon-based rather than carbon-based. You metabolize thermal energy directly, and your scales can regulate temperature across a huge range. Marcus paused. Oh, and you can breathe fire. That one's pretty obvious. Zirathi smiled at that. All correct, if simplified. But there's something else, something that isn't in your maintenance manuals because it's considered a state secret. The crystal display shifted, showing what looked like a complex energy network throughout a dragon's body. We call it the Jakhal in ancient Draconic. In your language, it might translate as soul fire or life flame. Marcus studied the display, noting how the energy patterns seemed to flow through every part of the dragon anatomy. It looks like some kind of internal power system. More than that, it's our connection to what you might call magic, though that's another oversimplification. The Jakhal is how we channel thermal energy, how we fly despite our size, how we live for thousands of years. Her expression grew troubled, and it's dying out. Dying out? The younger generations are born with weaker Jakhal. Each century, our children are less connected to the ancient powers. We've become a civilization of scientists and engineers, which has its benefits, but we're losing the essence of what made us dragons. She touched the crystal again, and the display zoomed in on what appeared to be gradually dimming energy nodes. I am over 1,500 years old, Marcus. I am among the last dragons born with full connection to the Jakhal. But you're the Empress? Marcus protested. Surely the medical technology of the Empire cannot heal what isn't a disease? Zirathi interrupted. My jackal has been failing for decades, slowly at first, then more rapidly in recent years. Today it finally reached the point where my body could no longer sustain itself. She turned back to him, and Marcus saw vulnerability in her eyes that probably no one else in the galaxy had ever witnessed. I was dying, Marcus, not from injury or illness, but from the simple fact that the fire that has burned within me for 15 centuries was finally going out. Marcus felt a chill despite the warm air. And then I touched you, and then you touched me, and somehow your life force supplemented mine. Not replaced it, supplemented it, strengthened it, rekindled flames that should have been cold forever. She walked back to her chair, moving with the fluid grace of perfect health. In all our histories, in all our scientific knowledge, there is no precedent for this. It should be impossible. Maybe it's not about dragon science, Marcus suggested, then immediately felt foolish for offering theories to someone who'd been alive longer than human civilization. I mean, you said humans aren't in your medical databases much. Maybe there's something about human biology that your people haven't studied. Zirathi considered this. It's possible, though unlikely. We've had human subjects in our research facilities for decades. Something in her tone made Marcus uncomfortable. Research facilities? Nothing harmful, she assured him quickly, catching his expression. Voluntary participation, with full compensation. We needed to understand human physiology to properly design life support systems, medical protocols, safety equipment. She paused. Though I admit the research has been somewhat limited in scope. Limited how? We focused primarily on understanding your physical limitations and requirements, nutritional needs, atmospheric preferences, environmental tolerances. Zirathi looked slightly embarrassed, which was a strange expression on a creature who could melt steel with her breath. We've never really studied humans as individuals, more as a species to be managed. Marcus felt a familiar frustration rising. Right. Useful pets. Yes, that's an accurate summary of imperial policy toward humans, Zirathi admitted. It's something I've never questioned before today. And now? Now I'm wondering what else we've missed by thinking of your people as simple tools rather than complex beings. She activated the crystal display again, this time showing what looked like energy readings. These are scans I took of you during our second contact when I asked you to touch my hand deliberately. Marcus studied the swirling patterns of light and energy. They reminded him of aurora displays, beautiful but incomprehensible. What am I looking at? Your bioelectric field during the moment of contact. This is impossible, Marcus. She highlighted sections of the display. You're somehow channeling energy that doesn't exist in your body. Look here. This is the baseline reading of your normal bioelectric activity, typical for a healthy human male. The highlighted section showed gentle, regular waves of activity, nothing particularly impressive. Now look at this. The display shifted to the moment of contact. Suddenly, the gentle waves exploded into brilliant cascades of energy, flowing in patterns that hurt Marcus's eyes to follow. This is you during healing contact. You're somehow accessing energy levels that should liquefy your nervous system instantly. But I feel fine, Marcus protested. Better than fine, actually. I feel energized. Exactly the problem. You're channeling enough power to restart a stellar core, and instead of killing you instantly, it's making you feel refreshed. Zirathi manipulated the display again, zooming in on specific energy patterns. Furthermore, this energy signature doesn't match anything in our databases. It's not thermal, not electromagnetic, not any form of radiation we understand. Marcus stared at the impossible readings of his own body. So what is it? I have a theory, but you're not going to like it. At this point, I think I can handle whatever you've got. Zirathi was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. What if the energy isn't coming from you? What if it's coming through you? Through me? From where? That's the question, isn't it? She stood again, pacing to the large viewport that dominated one wall of the study. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly as the ship maintained its course through hyperspace. In ancient dragon lore, there are stories of beings who could channel the fundamental forces of existence itself. Not magic, not technology, but something deeper. Something that existed before the universe settled into the patterns we call physics. Marcus joined her at the viewport, feeling very small against the cosmic backdrop. You're talking about something that predates the laws of reality itself. I'm talking about the possibility that humans, dismissed as primitive and powerless, might actually be the most significant species in the galaxy. She turned to look at him, and her eyes held a mixture of awe and fear. What if your people are natural conduits for forces that the rest of us have forgotten how to access? Marcus tried to process the implications. That's insane, is it? Think about your species' history. Humans have always been incredibly adaptable, haven't they? You survive in environments that would kill most other species. You form complex social bonds across genetic lines. You create art and music and stories that somehow resonate with completely alien minds. She gestured toward him. And apparently you can channel life force itself without any training or understanding. Marcus felt overwhelmed. Even if that's true, even if humans have some kind of special connection to cosmic forces, I'm just one person. I can't be that important. One person who saved the life of the Dragon Empress through powers he doesn't understand, Zirathi pointed out. One person who might represent the key to preventing the extinction of my people's connection to the Zak Hall. She placed a gentle claw on his shoulder. One person who has just become the most valuable and dangerous individual in the known galaxy. Before Marcus could respond, an urgent chiming filled the air. The crystal formations began pulsing red, and Zirathi's expression immediately became alert and dangerous. "What is that?" Marcus asked. "Emergency signal. Someone is attempting to board my ship without permission." Her eyes narrowed, and wisps of smoke began curling from her nostrils. "Given the timing, I suspect our conversation has been more public than I intended." The study's main doors irised open, and Commander Sethrak entered at a run. His scales were pale with urgency, and he barely remembered to bow before speaking. "Your Imperial Majesty, we have a problem. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace and are demanding the immediate transfer of the human for essential scientific study. They're flying the colors of Lord Vorthak's house." Zirathi's expression could have melted armor. "Are they indeed? And did you inform Lord Vorthak's ships that the human in question is under my personal protection?" "Yes, Your Majesty. They responded that the matter is too important for normal protocols. They're threatening to board us if we don't comply within the hour." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "They're going to take me apart in a laboratory, aren't they?" "Not while I draw breath," Zirathi said firmly. The temperature in the room rose noticeably, and Marcus realized he was seeing what Imperial wrath actually looked like. "Commander, signal the fleet. I want my personal guard squadron here immediately." "Your Majesty," Sethrak said hesitantly, "Lord Vorthak's message claimed authority from the Royal Council. If he has official sanction, then the Royal Council has just declared war on their Empress." Zirathi cut him off. "Make the signal, Commander." As Sethrak hurried away, Zirathi turned back to Marcus. "It seems your education in Imperial politics is about to become rather more hands-on than either of us anticipated." Marcus looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there ships full of beings who saw him as a laboratory specimen were preparing to take him by force. "What do? We? Zirathi raised an elegant scaled eyebrow. "You said I was valuable and dangerous. You also said I was under your protection." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "If they want to study me like a lab rat, they're going to have to go through both of us." For the first time since they'd met, Zirathi smiled with genuine warmth. "Marcus Chen, I believe you're going to fit into Imperial politics better than expected. Does that mean you have a plan?" "I have the beginning of a plan," she corrected. "The rest we'll improvise as we go." "Great," Marcus said dryly. "My favorite kind of plan." Outside the viewport, 3 new ships had appeared, their angular hulls bristling with weapons. They were moving into attack formation, clearly not interested in negotiation. Marcus realized that his quiet life was well and truly over. From now on, he would be either the key to saving an ancient species or a victim of political ambition. He looked at the Empress beside him, regal and determined despite the threat bearing down on them. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm glad it was your ship I fell onto."
"Ask me again when this is over," Zirathi replied, but her eyes held approval.
"You may change your mind when you see what protecting you is going to cost." As the enemy ships moved closer, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what forces he'd accidentally awakened with a single touch. Whatever they were, there was no going back now. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when someone threatened a species that could channel the fundamental forces of existence itself, and Marcus was about to learn that being irreplaceable was its own kind of prison. The war room of the Celestial Dominion materialized around Marcus and Zirathi as they stepped through what had appeared to be a solid wall moments before. Dragon technology still amazed him. The ship's bio-neural matrix could reconfigure itself at thought speed, creating specialized environments for any need. This particular environment was clearly designed for battle planning. Holographic displays filled the air, showing tactical information, ship positions, and what Marcus assumed were weapon readiness indicators. Everything was scaled for dragon physiology, making him feel like a child in an adult's workspace. "Status report," Zirathi commanded as they entered. Commander Sethrak was already present, along with several other high-ranking officers whose elaborate scale patterns marked them as members of the Imperial Guard. They all looked grimly focused, the kind of expression military professionals wore when politics had turned violent. "3 heavy cruisers, Your Majesty," Sethrak reported. "House Vorthak colors, but they're not broadcasting normal diplomatic codes. These are military vessels on a combat mission." "Crew complements." "Approximately 2,000 per ship, mixed dragon and auxiliary species." Sethrak paused meaningfully. "No humans aboard any of the approaching vessels." Marcus felt a chill. Ships heading into a potential battle situation would normally have human crew members for maintenance and technical support. The fact that these ships had deliberately excluded humans suggested they were planning something that would be unpleasant for his species to witness. "How long until your guard squadron arrives?" Zirathi asked. 12 hours at best, Your Majesty. They were conducting exercises in the Rigel system when we sent the signal." "And Vorthak's deadline?" 53 minutes. Zirathi studied the tactical display, her eyes tracking the movement patterns of the approaching ships. "They're confident," she observed. 3 ships against 1, overwhelming numbers advantage. They expect us to surrender rather than fight. "Will we?" Marcus asked, immediately feeling foolish for questioning military strategy. "I mean, is fighting even an option?" Every dragon in the room turned to stare at him, and Marcus realized he just asked the Dragon Empress if she was willing to fight to protect a single human. The audacity was probably unprecedented in Imperial history. Zirathi, however, seemed amused rather than offended. "Marcus raises an excellent point. Commander Sethrak, what are our tactical options?" "Honestly, Your Majesty?" "Not good. The Celestial Dominion is a diplomatic vessel, not a warship. We have defensive capabilities, but against 3 heavy cruisers, Sethrak's expression was grim. We could run, but they'll catch us before we can jump back to hyperspace." "Then we fight," Zirathi said simply. "Your Majesty," one of the other officers spoke up, "a female dragon with intricate gold and silver scale patterns. With respect, the risk to your person is enormous. Perhaps we should consider negotiating." "Negotiate what, Colonel Thyrix?" "The terms under which I hand over a being under my personal protection to be dissected by Lord Vorthak's scientists." Zirathi's voice carried the kind of cold fury that could freeze stars. "I think not, but Your Majesty," Colonel Thyrix pressed, "surely the strategic value of preserving the Imperial bloodline outweighs—" "Careful, Colonel," Zirathi interrupted, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're about to suggest that I should sacrifice an innocent being to save myself. Choose your next words very carefully." Colonel Thyrix went pale around her scales and wisely decided to study her claws with sudden, intense interest. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the situation. These beings were prepared to risk their lives, risk their Empress, to protect him from something he still didn't fully understand. Your Majesty, Zirathi, maybe there's another option. What if I went with them voluntarily? Every dragon in the room turned to stare at him again, but this time their expressions ranged from shock to outright horror. Absolutely not, Zirathi said firmly. But if it prevents a battle... Marcus, she cut him off, you don't understand what scientific study means in this context. Lord Vorthak and his allies see you as a potentially unlimited source of power. They will study you until they understand exactly how your abilities work, regardless of what that process does to you. You mean they'd... Marcus felt sick as the implications hit him. They'd never let me go. They'd never let you die, Commander Sethrak said grimly. But they'd also never let you live in any way that you'd recognize as living. Before Marcus could respond, new alerts began flashing on the tactical displays. Zirathi studied the information with growing alarm. They're accelerating their approach, she observed, and bringing weapons online. It seems Lord Vorthak has decided that negotiation isn't worth the effort. Your Majesty, Colonel Theoric said urgently, incoming transmission. Lord Vorthak himself, on screen. The main display shimmered, then resolved into the image of a dragon that made Marcus's skin crawl. Lord Vorthak was ancient even by dragon standards, his scales bearing the deep scarring of extreme age, but his eyes burned with an intelligence that was both brilliant and utterly ruthless. When his gaze found Marcus through the display, the human felt like a mouse being studied by a particularly hungry snake. Empress Zirathi, Vorthak said, his voice carrying the formal tones of High Court protocol. I trust you are recovered from your recent indisposition. Lord Vorthak, Zirathi replied coolly, I see you've brought quite an escort for a simple diplomatic visit. These are extraordinary circumstances requiring extraordinary measures. Vorthak's gaze shifted back to Marcus. The human beside you represents a breakthrough that could revolutionize our understanding of life force manipulation. Surely you understand that such knowledge cannot remain in private hands. The human beside me, Zirathi said with dangerous emphasis, is under my personal protection. He has been granted the title of Imperial Consultant and all the privileges thereof. Vorthak waved a dismissive claw, a generous gesture, but one that exceeds your authority in matters of imperial security. The Royal Council has voted. Has it? Zirathi interrupted. How fascinating. I don't recall being informed of any council session. Perhaps you could share the official minutes? For the first time, Vorthak looked uncomfortable. The matter was deemed too urgent for normal protocols. A special session, an illegal session, Zirathi corrected. Any council vote taken without the presence or input of the reigning Empress is, by definition, illegitimate. Her smile was sharp enough to cut steel. Really, Vorthak, after 15 centuries of politics, you should know better than to attempt such amateur scheming. The matter is too important for legal technicalities, Vorthak said, abandoning any pretense of diplomatic courtesy. That human possesses abilities that could save our species from extinction. I will not allow your personal sentiments to... My personal sentiments? Zirathi's voice dropped to the kind of whisper that preceded volcanic eruptions. Lord Vorthak, you appear to have forgotten something important about imperial authority. And what would that be, Your Majesty? I am not just the Empress. I am the last dragon alive with full connection to the Jahal. I am the living embodiment of everything our species used to be. Flames began dancing around her words, and the temperature in the war room rose noticeably. If you want to save dragonkind from extinction, you might consider not threatening the being who just saved the life of the only dragon capable of teaching the old ways. The transmission flickered as Vorthak's image wavered with rage. You would risk civil war over a single human? I would risk anything necessary to protect what's right, Zirathi replied. The question is, are you prepared for the consequences of what you're about to attempt? Vorthak's expression shifted, and Marcus saw something that chilled him to the bone. Fanatic certainty. I am prepared to do whatever is necessary to ensure the survival of dragonkind. even if that means removing an Empress who has lost sight of her responsibilities. The transmission cut off, leaving the war room in stunned silence. "Well," Xyrithy said conversationally, "that was illuminating. It seems Lord Vorthak has just committed treason on an open channel." "Your Majesty," Commander Sethrak said urgently, "new contacts approaching, multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace." Marcus felt his heart sink, expecting to see reinforcements for Vorthak's forces. Instead, the tactical display showed something that made every dragon in the room straighten with surprise. "Those are Imperial Guard transponders," Colonel Thyrix breathed. "But how?" "Prince Calith," Xyrithy said with satisfaction. "My son has excellent timing." The main display activated again, this time showing a dragon who was clearly Xyrithy's offspring. Prince Calith had her intelligent eyes but scales of deep emerald rather than obsidian. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of controlled anger that suggested violence was imminent. "Mother, are you unharmed?" "Perfectly well, Calith, though I suspect Lord Vorthak is about to become significantly less well in the immediate future. I received Commander Sethrak's emergency signal and came as quickly as possible." Calith's gaze found Marcus, and the human was surprised to see curiosity rather than hostility in the prince's expression. "So this is the human who performed the impossible healing?" Marcus Chen, Xyrithy confirmed. "Marcus, this is my son, Prince Calith Nightflame, heir to the Imperial throne and commander of the Imperial Guard." Marcus managed a nervous nod. "Your Highness." "Just Prince, please," Calith said with what might have been amusement. "Given what you've done for my mother, formal protocol seems rather pointless." His expression grew serious. "Are you well? Unharmed?" "So far," Marcus replied, "though I think that's about to change." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Calith said firmly. "Vorthak and his conspirators have made a serious error in threatening someone under Imperial protection." The tactical display updated again, showing new ship positions. Calith had brought 5 Imperial Guard dreadnoughts, massive vessels that dwarfed even Vorthak's heavy cruisers. The arrival had shifted the balance of power dramatically. "Impressive response time," Xyrithy observed. "Were you already in the area?" "I was investigating reports of unusual Royal Council activity," Calith admitted. "There have been whispers of unauthorized meetings, secret votes. I was already concerned about Vorthak's ambitions when your emergency signal arrived. And now I have all the evidence I need to bring charges of treason against half the Royal Council." Calith's smile was as sharp as his mother's. Attempting to coerce the Empress through military force is traditionally considered grounds for execution. Marcus felt a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. The tactical display was showing new activity around Vorthak's ships, launch bays opening. "They're launching assault shuttles," Commander Sethrak reported. "Looks like they're planning to board us regardless of the odds." "Fanatics," Xyrithy observed with disgust. "They're so convinced of their righteous cause that they'll throw away their lives for it." "Your Majesty," Colonel Thyrix said urgently, "the assault shuttles aren't heading for our ship. They're spreading out, taking positions around the formation. It looks like they're planning to ram Prince Calith's vessels." Marcus felt sick. "They're going to use suicide attacks?" "It appears so." Calith's voice came from the display. "Mother, I'm reading massive energy buildups in those shuttles. They're overloading their power cores." "Can you stop them?" "Some of them. But if even one gets through," Calith's expression was grim. "They could cripple one of my ships." Marcus watched the tactical display, seeing the small craft positioning themselves for their final attacks. Hundreds of beings were about to die, all because of something he'd done accidentally while falling through a ceiling. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "All of this is happening because of me." "No," Xyrithy said firmly. "This is happening because ambitious beings are willing to commit mass murder to get what they want. That's not on you, Marcus." But Marcus barely heard her. He was staring at the tactical display, watching the energy readings from the suicide shuttles. The patterns looked familiar, similar to what he'd seen when Xyrithy had shown him the scans of his own bioelectric field during the healing. "Xyrithy," he said slowly, "those power core overloads? What would happen if someone disrupted the energy flow?" the cores would destabilize safely rather than explosively, she replied, then looked at him with growing alarm. Marcus, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that if I can channel life force, maybe I can channel other types of energy too. He met her gaze steadily. What if there's a way to stop this that doesn't involve anyone dying? Absolutely not, Kaleth said from the display. We don't even understand how your abilities work. Attempting to manipulate shuttle power cores across empty space is suicide. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but it's better than watching hundreds of people die because of something I accidentally started. Marcus, Zarathi said carefully, even if such a thing were possible, the energy requirements would be enormous. You could kill yourself trying. Marcus thought about his grandmother dying alone in a hospital bed because human medical technology wasn't a priority for Imperial healthcare funding. He thought about all the maintenance workers like himself, invisible and expendable, keeping the Empire running from the shadows. He thought about what it meant to finally matter, to finally have the chance to save lives instead of just fixing machines. Then I guess we'll find out what humans are really capable of, he said. Before anyone could stop him, Marcus placed his hand on the war room central display console. Immediately, he felt the ship's bioneural matrix respond to his touch, welcoming him in a way that felt disturbingly natural. Through the ship's sensors, he could feel the suicide shuttles approaching, their power cores blazing like tiny stars about to go nova. But more than that, he could feel the life force of everyone aboard those shuttles, beings terrified but determined, willing to die for what they believed was right. I can feel them, he whispered, awed by the sensation. All of them. They're so scared, but they think they're saving their species. Marcus, Zarathi said urgently, you need to stop. The energy flow through the console is already beyond safe levels. But Marcus was beyond hearing her. He'd found the connection between the shuttle's power cores and their life support systems, the delicate balance that kept overload from becoming explosion. With careful precision that he didn't know he possessed, he began to redirect energy flows, channeling excess power into harmless dissipation rather than destructive release. One by one, the suicide shuttles went dark as their power cores shut down safely. Their occupants were left alive but stranded, drifting harmlessly in the void. Marcus maintained the connection for another moment, making sure all the shuttles were stabilized, then collapsed as the energy drain hit him like a physical blow. The war room fell silent except for the sound of his labored breathing. Status report, Zarathi said quietly. All hostile shuttles neutralized, Commander Sethrak reported, his voice filled with awe. No explosions, no casualties. Their life support is stable, but propulsion and weapons are completely offline. And the human? Prince Kaleth asked from the display. Zarathi knelt beside Marcus, checking his pulse with gentle claws. Exhausted but alive. His bioelectric readings are, she paused, studying the medical scanners. Actually, they're stronger than before, as if the effort enhanced his abilities rather than depleting them. Marcus struggled to sit up, his head spinning. Did it work? Is everyone okay? Everyone is fine, Marcus, Zarathi assured him. You just prevented a massacre through methods that should be theoretically impossible. Good, Marcus mumbled, then looked up at the tactical display where Prince Kaleth was staring at him with undisguised amazement. Your Highness, I don't suppose this whole situation could be kept quiet. Kaleth laughed, a sound like distant thunder mixed with genuine mirth. Marcus Chen, you just demonstrated abilities that rewrite everything we thought we knew about the fundamental forces of the universe, while being observed by the sensors of 8 different starships. His smile was rueful. I'm afraid your days of anonymity are permanently over. Wonderful, Marcus sighed. Don't worry, Zarathi said, helping him to his feet. We'll figure out how to navigate this together. Together? Marcus, Prince Kaleth said seriously. After what I've just witnessed, you're not leaving Imperial protection ever again. Mother was right. You're far too valuable and too dangerous to be anywhere but at the very center of the Empire's power structure. Marcus looked around the war room at dragons who were studying him with mixtures of awe, fear, and respect. In the span of a few hours, he'd gone from invisible maintenance worker to the most important human in the galaxy. I just wanted to fix atmospheric processors, he said weakly. I know, Zirathi said sympathetically. Unfortunately, you've just proven that humans can manipulate fundamental forces that we barely understand. That changes everything for your species.
Everything? Everything? Prince Caliph confirmed.
Starting with the fact that humans are about to be reclassified from useful auxiliaries to essential imperial assets. Your people are going to have a very different future than anyone imagined. Marcus thought about all the humans scattered across the galaxy, working in maintenance bays and support roles, invisible and underestimated. If he'd truly unlocked some kind of species-wide potential, we need to talk, he said finally. All of us. About what this means and what happens next. Agreed, Zirathi said, but first we need to deal with Lord Vorthak and his remaining ships. The tactical display showed the 3 heavy cruisers maintaining position, their crews undoubtedly trying to process the fact that their suicide attack had been effortlessly neutralized by forces they didn't understand. What do we do with them? Marcus asked. We give them a choice, Prince Caliph said grimly. Surrender and face trial for treason, or find out what happens when they threaten someone who can apparently manipulate energy at the quantum level. As if summoned by his words, Lord Vorthak's image appeared on the main display again. The ancient dragon looked shaken but still defiant. What manner of witchcraft? He began. Not witchcraft, Zirathi interrupted. Evolution. The universe has just provided a demonstration of what happens when you underestimate humans. Her smile could have melted asteroids. The question now, Lord Vorthak, is whether you're intelligent enough to learn from that demonstration. Marcus watched the standoff unfold, knowing that his accidental discovery was about to reshape the political landscape of the entire galaxy. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Imperial Palace on Piraxis Prime, trying not to fidget with his new formal clothing. The outfit had been specially tailored by the Imperial seamsters, a blend of human and dragon fashion that somehow managed to look both elegant and practical. More importantly, it was designed to handle the energy discharges that had become an uncomfortable side effect of his developing abilities. The chamber itself was a marvel of dragon architecture, carved from a single massive crystal formation that had been hollowed out over centuries. The walls threw rainbow patterns across the floor as natural light filtered through them, creating an environment that felt more like standing inside a living gem than a political meeting room. Around him, the most powerful beings in the known galaxy were engaged in the kind of heated debate that usually preceded wars or revolutions. The aftermath of the Vorthak incident had sent shockwaves through the Empire that were still reverberating. The implications are staggering, declared Princess Vitra Goldscale, Zirathi's younger daughter and head of the Imperial Science Division. If humans can manipulate fundamental energy patterns without technology or training, we need to completely reassess our understanding of their species. More than that, added Admiral Korath Ironwing, the Empire's military chief of staff. We need to reassess our security protocols. How many humans are currently working in sensitive positions throughout the Empire? If they all have this potential, they don't, Marcus interjected, drawing the attention of the assembled council members. Even after 3 days of briefings and discussions, he still felt surreal speaking to beings who could remake star systems. At least, I don't think they do. Explain, Zirathi requested from her position at the head of the crystalline table. Marcus activated the holographic display that Princess Vitra had taught him to use. Another unsettling discovery was that human minds interfaced with dragon technology far more easily than anyone had expected. We've been testing other humans aboard the fleet, he explained, highlighting data from the past 72 hours. Out of 300 volunteers, only 12 showed any detectable bioelectric anomalies, and only 3 could achieve anything resembling energy manipulation. Still, Prince Caliph observed, 12 potential power wielders out of 300 is a significant percentage. Extrapolated across the human population could mean thousands of individuals with these capabilities, Admiral Korath finished grimly. Individuals we've been treating as manual laborers and support staff, Lord Silas Emeraldclaw, One of the few Royal Council members who hadn't been arrested after the Vorthak incident shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Perhaps we should consider the security implications more carefully. These humans have access to virtually every critical system in the Empire, and have been maintaining those systems faithfully for decades, Zarathi pointed out coolly. Are you suggesting that loyalty is determined by species, Lord Silas? I'm suggesting that circumstances have changed dramatically, Silas replied. 3 days ago, humans were a dependent species under Imperial protection. Today we discover they may be the most powerful beings in the galaxy. That changes the political dynamic considerably. Marcus felt the familiar weight of being discussed as a thing rather than a person, but before he could respond, Princess Vitra spoke up. Actually, Lord Silas, that's not quite accurate. Marcus, show them the energy pattern analysis. On December 10th, Marcus manipulated the display, bringing up the detailed scans that Vitra's team had compiled. The energy we're channeling doesn't come from us, he explained. It comes through us. We're not generating power, we're accessing something that already exists. Accessing what? Admiral Korath asked. That's the question, isn't it? Marcus admitted. Princess Vitra thinks it might be some kind of background energy field that pervades the universe, something that most species can't detect or interact with. Like a cosmic power source, Prince Caliph mused. That would explain why dragon technology responds so readily to human operators. Our bio-neural systems might be naturally compatible with whatever force you're channeling. It would also explain historical anomalies, Princess Vitra added excitedly. There are records of human maintenance workers achieving impossible repairs, solving problems that should have been beyond their technical knowledge. We always attributed it to intuition or creativity. But what if they were unconsciously manipulating energy patterns? Marcus nodded. That's what I think happened to me initially. I've been working with dragon technology for years, getting better at it than my training should have allowed. I thought I was just good with machines. But the healing, Zarathi interrupted, that was something entirely different. You didn't just interface with technology, you channeled life force directly. Because you needed it, Marcus said simply. The energy responds to necessity, to genuine need. When you were dying, I could access healing forces. When those shuttles were about to explode, I could access systems to prevent it. He paused, choosing his words carefully. It's like the universe itself wants to help, but only when the cause is right. The chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. A power source that responds to moral imperative, Lord Silas said slowly. That's concerning. Why? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Because it suggests that humans have access to forces that judge the worthiness of their actions, Admiral Korath explained. That's the kind of power that could reshape the galaxy's entire power structure, only if humans choose to use it that way, Prince Caliph pointed out. Marcus has shown remarkable restraint and wisdom so far. One human has, Lord Silas corrected. What about the others? What about the ones who might not share his ethical standards? Before Marcus could respond to what felt like a thinly veiled insult, new alerts began chiming throughout the chamber. Princess Vitra quickly accessed the communication system, her expression growing concerned as she read the incoming data. Your Majesty, she said urgently, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human workers are spontaneously manifesting energy manipulation abilities. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Spontaneously? How? Unknown. The reports are scattered but consistent. Humans who showed no previous abilities are suddenly able to interface with technology in unprecedented ways. Some are performing healing similar to your initial demonstration. How many reports? Zarathi asked. 47 confirmed incidents in the past 6 hours, and the number is growing. The chamber erupted into concerned conversations as the dragons tried to process this development. Marcus stared at the data streaming across the holographic display, feeling responsible for something he didn't understand. It's spreading, he realized. Whatever I awakened, it's spreading to other humans. Like a chain reaction, Princess Vitra confirmed. as if your demonstration somehow activated dormant potential in others of your species. Your Majesty, Admiral Korath said urgently, if human abilities continue to expand, we need to consider helping them. Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying more authority than he'd intended. These people are probably terrified. They're experiencing abilities they don't understand in a society that's always treated them as second-class citizens. Marcus is right, Zirathi agreed. Our priority should be support and education, not security containment. With respect, Your Majesty, Lord Silas said, we don't know what these humans are capable of. Until we understand the full extent of their potential, he was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a new holographic figure in the center of the chamber. A young human woman in maintenance coveralls, her hair singed and her face streaked with tears. Please, she said in accented standard, someone help us. Something's wrong with the power systems on Kepler Station, and I don't know what I did to cause it. Marcus recognized her immediately. Sarah Martinez, one of the workers he'd known before joining the fleet rotation. Sarah, how are you projecting into a secured Imperial facility? I don't know, she replied, her voice shaking. Everything started going crazy about an hour ago. The computers respond to my thoughts. The power systems fluctuate when I get emotional. And now I'm somehow talking to you through the station's communication array without even touching it. Princess Vitra was rapidly analyzing the transmission. Impossible, she breathed. She somehow created a quantum entanglement link across 3 star systems. The power requirements alone, Sarah, Marcus said gently. Try to calm down. You are probably channeling energy without realizing it. Channeling energy? Sarah's image flickered as her emotions spiked. Marcus, what's happening to us? The stories coming from other stations, people are saying humans are developing impossible abilities. It's true, Marcus confirmed, but it's going to be okay. We're going to help you understand and control it. Are we? Lord Silas asked pointedly. These manifestations are becoming more powerful and less controlled. This woman is casually creating interstellar communication links. What happens when someone with less stable emotional control develops similar abilities? As if summoned by his words, new alerts flooded the display. Princess Vitra's expression grew increasingly alarmed as she processed the data. We have a problem, she announced. 3 separate incidents of humans accidentally overloading power grids. One caused a blackout on an entire orbital habitat. Injuries, Zirathi asked immediately. No casualties, but significant infrastructure damage. And that's not the worst part. Vitra highlighted a specific report. The human responsible for the orbital blackout was a teenage maintenance apprentice. The power surge he generated was equivalent to a small stellar flare. Marcus felt sick. A teenager? How old? 16 standard years. The implications hit everyone in the chamber simultaneously. If teenagers were manifesting abilities that could affect entire space habitats, the potential for accidental catastrophe was enormous. We need intervention protocols immediately, Admiral Korath said. Evacuation procedures for human-populated areas, power grid isolations, communication. We need to help them, Marcus said firmly, cutting off the military planning. These aren't weapons going off randomly. These are people who are scared and confused and need guidance. Noble sentiment, Lord Silas replied, but impractical. How do we guide abilities we don't understand? How do we train people to control forces that rewrite the laws of physics? The same way dragons learn to control the Zakhal, Zirathi said thoughtfully. Through mentorship, practice, and understanding. Your Majesty, Prince Caliph said carefully, the Zakhal took our people thousands of years to master. We don't have that kind of time if human abilities continue to escalate. Then we compress the learning curve, Marcus said, an idea forming in his mind. What if the key isn't individual training? What if it's collective understanding?
Explain, Princess Vitra requested. Marcus gestured to Sarah's still flickering hologram.
She created an interstellar communication link without training or conscious intent. She did it because she needed help and wanted to reach me specifically. He looked around the chamber. What if human abilities are inherently collaborative? What if we're meant to work together? You're suggesting some kind of psychic network? Admiral Korath asked skeptically. I'm suggesting that maybe the energy field we're accessing is designed for cooperation rather than individual power, Marcus clarified. Every manifestation so far has been in response to genuine need healing, communication, problem solving. What if the universe is trying to help us help each other? Zarathi leaned forward, intrigued. A species-wide awakening triggered by necessity. It would explain the timing. Why now, when dragons are losing connection to our own ancient powers? A replacement, Princess Vitra breathed. Or a supplement. Humans developing abilities that complement dragon technology and knowledge.
Symbiosis, Prince Caliph added. Not competition, but cooperation. Lord Silas looked unconvinced.
You're anthropomorphizing cosmic forces, assigning intent and purpose to what might simply be random evolution. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but consider this. Every human manifestation has been beneficial or protective. No one has used these abilities for violence or personal gain. If it were random evolution, wouldn't we see a more varied moral distribution? He has a point, Admiral Korath acknowledged reluctantly. In military terms, these abilities seem designed for support and enhancement rather than direct combat. Which brings us back to the immediate problem, Zarathi said. How do we help humans understand and control abilities that are manifesting across the galaxy? Marcus looked at Sarah's hologram, still flickering with her emotional distress, then at the concerned faces around the council table. An idea was forming, crazy, unprecedented, but potentially necessary. What if we create a network, he said slowly, not just for communication, but for teaching. If I can connect with other humans the way Sarah connected with me, maybe we can share understanding directly. You mean teach them through the same energy field they're accessing? Princess Vitra realized. Bypass traditional learning methods entirely. Exactly, but I'd need help. And I'd need to be in contact with as many awakening humans as possible. That would require traveling to every human-populated system in the Empire, Admiral Korath pointed out. The logistics alone— No, Marcus interrupted, his mind racing with possibilities he was just beginning to understand. I don't think I need to be physically present. Sarah reached me across 3 star systems just by needing to communicate. If I can establish a network connection, I might be able to reach everyone simultaneously. The chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. A telepathic teaching network spanning the entire galaxy, Lord Silas said flatly. Controlled by humans. Controlled by need, Marcus corrected. And supervised by people who understand the responsibilities involved. It's unprecedented, Prince Caliph observed. The political implications alone. The political implications of not doing it are worse, Zarathi said firmly. We've seen what uncontrolled manifestations can do. This might be our only option for preventing catastrophic accidents. Marcus stood, feeling the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. Your Majesty, with your permission, I'd like to try establishing contact with the awakening humans. Not to control them, but to help them understand what's happening and how to manage it safely. Zarathi studied him for a long moment. You realize that if this works, you'll become the de facto leader of every enhanced human in the galaxy? The responsibility will be enormous. I know, Marcus said quietly, but I also know what it feels like to be alone and confused when impossible things start happening to you. No one should have to go through this without guidance. Very well, Zarathi decided. Princess Vitra will provide technical support, Prince Caliph will handle security concerns, and I will personally oversee the political aspects. Admiral Korath, prepare contingency plans for various scenarios. And Lord Silas, she added, fixing the counselor with a pointed look, will coordinate with human population centers to provide local support for manifestation incidents. Lord Silas bowed reluctantly. As you command, Your Majesty. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing he was about to attempt something that could change the nature of human existence forever. Sarah, he said, addressing the hologram, I'm going to try something new. Don't be afraid. Just trust me. He reached out through the energy field, feeling for the connections that linked him to other humans across the galaxy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. hundreds of confused, scared, amazed voices touching his mind, seeking guidance and understanding. For the first time since falling through that ceiling, Marcus smiled with genuine confidence. The human species was about to discover what they were truly capable of. Together, the mechanic's accidental touch revived the dying dragon Empress, leaving her royal family stunned.